CROCO.
All right, guys, I am going to switch over to this so that way we can begin. Thank you guys for joining us for another edition of Croco's Corner or Squad Nero Podcast. If you are viewing this on Squad Nero Podcast, thank you for everyone who's tuned into our shows. Again, we Squad Nero have our shows on Sundays but typically or Monday evenings that you can find over at the Squad Nero Podcast YouTube, as well as that you can find that on Twitch if you are a Twitch streamer of the sorts. You can find us over on Twitch at Smooth Entertainment, twitch.tv/Smooth Entertainment. That is the Twitch of our co-host T Smooth. So guys, be on the lookout just for any show that we have. That's where we'll be going over topics such as Marvel, DC, anime, manga. You get a blend of all of those things. You also can find all of that same media over at our YouTube, youtube.com/@squadnero716. So be sure to be on the lookout for anything that we post, whether it's a review, whether it is a actual full-on podcast, or whether it is just any other content. And there also should be new things that will be coming into fray in the near future, so please just be on the lookout for that. As well as that, I am going to upload a lot of the same content, but not all of the content, but some of the same content over on Croco's Corner, so you can check us out on the Croco's Corner page as well. Also available as an audio file on all major streaming platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, YouTube's kind of podcast section. All of these areas you will be able to find the Croco's Corner podcast, anything that we do with that, as well as anything that we do in regards to Squad Nero podcast in regards to just like our shows. So be on the lookout for those things, guys. What I am going to be diving into today is going to be a series called Mad. It is a manga that I actually have gotten into recently, and I just felt like it would be worth it to kind of give a review to anybody who is just looking for new manga to read. Look, it doesn't have to be something where this becomes like a series per se. It doesn't have to be anything where this becomes an anime for the actual content that's being made. It's just something where it's like, hey, let me just kind of reach out to you guys and give you guys some content that I just kind of have been reading. It should be more things that will kind of come into play down the line in the near future. There's a bunch of series that I'm kind of reading and looking into now. You can read these series just to kind of point you guys in a direction of where, if any of the stuff that you see me make content for, you would like to read yourselves, you can find these things on the Shonen Jump app. I can't exactly remember what the name of that fully is right now, but the more popular. Hold on, let me just look it up for you. Okay, excuse me. Yes, the Shonen Jump app is just referred to as the Shonen Jump app. The other app that I am thinking of is going to be Manga Plus. Those are the two places where any series that you see me go over and just kind of talk about, which will for the most part be like newer series such as Mad, you can check those out on Manga Plus, and as well as that Shonen Jump's apps. And outside of that, if there's any other place that you can find or want to find these things, that's up to you for however you want to do that. But I will give you the ones that I personally have read via those two applications. What I am going to do is just kind of dive straight in with this. Mad is a manga series that is done by Yusuke Otori. I am not familiar with the mangaka. Trying to see here really quickly if I could bring up just something else that this mangaka has done, but in my honest opinion, this is probably the first thing, as far as I know, that I have read by this mangaka. Yeah, none of this other stuff. I mean, some of the stuff looks very interesting, But this is the first thing that I've had. If anybody out there is familiar with the series King or Yamagota's First Love or Freedom or Tom's Job Hunting, these are other series that have been done by Yusuke Otori. Again, I just am less familiar. This is my first introduction with this mangaka, so I'm not sure exactly. I don't have really any details in regards to, okay, this is this certain mangaka's writing style or art or illustration style or anything of the sort. I went into this series completely blind in a lot of ways, not only in what it was about, but also in regards to the author itself. So I hope that you guys can just kind of rock with me in regards to that. And outside of that, let me just kind of dive in. I'm going to go over basic review that I'm just going to do. I'm going to just kind of explain the series a little bit further. I'm going to go over some of the things that I enjoy about the series, some of the things that I don't enjoy about the series, as well as the series itself. I'm going to dive in further to certain characters that I would kind of put as mainstay or main characters from throughout the series. So if you have any interest in this series, I'm going to try to lay everything out for you guys without bringing in too many spoilers. There may be some things that I'll lightly kind of spoil, so I guess I will say spoiler alert. But again, for the most part, it's going to be 98 to 99% of this is going to be a spoiler-free review. So that way you can just make the decision yourself if it's something that you want to dive into in the near future. So Mad, as I stated, is a series that has been done by Yusuke Otori. The basic synopsis or idea about or plot towards the story is that the mysterious alien life forms have invaded Earth. Most of humanity is wiped off the face of the planet. John, his sister, and the remaining survivors hope to find a new world to inhabit, but one day they are targeted by aliens again. And I kind of like how they explained it. As I've been reading it, I kind of understand that synopsis a little bit better. And it really, what I love about the synopsis right there is it does a great job of kind of giving you the mystery that plays out within the series. Even the synopsis has that mystery, which is awesome to me. And then we'll talk about John and his sister a little bit further. But before we do that, I just want to point out just some highlights that I wanted to just kind of go over with you guys in regards to this series. What I think is let me back up for a second. We kind of got the synopsis there. One thing that I can tell you is it's going to get right to it and that kind of falls under the pacing of the series. So I'll start with that point. It gets right to everything. You're not going to kind of get any of that like backstory or what was things like at a calm point. No, we are jumping right into this apocalyptic world where humanity has gone through it, and then we start to meet the characters, and we start to get more of exactly what is going on in this exact place within this universe. I love that. They're not holding back. They're letting you know, look, we're just going into the world of everything. If there's anything that we need to explain in regards to backstory or anything like that, we can do that in a more unique and clever way where we can kind of express those things more throughout the story. If I were to compare this story to anything else that I have read, anything else that I have watched, I would say that it reminds me a lot of The Walking Dead. If you even just go to the Walking Dead TV series that is ended in a mess, but if you go back to that series in particular, when I think about that, how that series started off, is kind of like we have the main character in this hospital, but everything has already unfolded for the most part. It's like we're catching up with the main character, Rick, in this regard. And this series is very similar to the same, and it has the same kind of effect. It has the same thing going on here, where you are thrown into it. You meet the characters, at least some of the characters that you're going to see a little bit further down the line. The main character you do get, obviously, you're going to see him throughout everything, but you get him relatively early on. I love how it didn't even, one of the big things about this series is characters are very important to this series, at least from what I'm gathering so far with what I've read of, again, a very, very new series, manga. But anyways, characters have definitely portrayed themselves as being very important to the story. So what I love about how it opens is it's giving you everything that you need to know about the stakes in this universe, but it does kind of make you question who exactly is the main character. Like, you don't even know in the beginning, because there's so much that they're just kind of laying down in those early chapters for you to understand the world. But at the same time, it's not like you have to wait a long time to get introduced to the main character. You are introduced in these same sequences to the main character, and you start to learn a little bit more about him. But again, pacing is amazing in regards to how it just keeps you in things. It keeps you in the fold of this world that they're living. It's not like there's any moment that it lets up, and you just kind of have to go along with them in this journey and all of the things and emotions that can bring about. Another example that kind of of what it reminds me of is A Quiet Place. A Quiet Place, we now, in 2025, now we're getting more of the backstory towards everything that's happened. But in the beginning, when we first got A Quiet Place, the very first Quiet Place, it just kind of threw you in the fray of, okay, this is what's going on, and we'll try to catch you up. But for the main things that you need to understand is everything that ties with this apocalyptic situation. I definitely would say Walking Dead, Quiet Place, it reminds me a lot of those series, as well as that it reminds me a lot of Predator. So it's kind of like a blend of those three series. And I'll kind of go more into that with these highlights and also early concerns. So just the other thing that we talked about, and I've kind of been talking about heavily in this video, is the idea of the characters and how characters play a big part in their relationships between each characters, how they play a big part. Typically, if you ever listen to our podcast, Squad Nero podcast comes on, airing on Sundays and Mondays, evening. So be on the lookout for that again. Just had to do a little quick shameless plug there. But if you've ever listened to our podcast, you know that I am a sucker for just high octane action. Those are the series that I grew up with. The first one that kind of captured my heart was Dragon Ball Z growing up. It was coming out at the same time that I was a child. If anybody out there can kind of realize how I just aged myself right there. But anyways, it was something that I fell in love with, and it was what introduced me to anime for the most part. So it's not the only type of series that I look forward to, but it's what was my introduction. So it's always kind of something that's close to home for me personally as an anime watcher and also as a manga consumer. This is not that. This is where it's more about, like, the characters are what draws the thrill. It's not Kai Blast or in Naruto Ninjutsu. It's not anything like that. It's more where you can get the same level of thrill that you would get in a Frieza versus Goku fight or a Sasuke versus Naruto fight. But what they're pulling on to actually get those things out of you is the relationships between the characters. I like when this happens in series, especially anime. I think animation has a very strong storytelling characteristic behind it in anime and manga. I think that the mangakas and such, that's one of their stronger points, is that they're able to blend things like Buddhist traditions or Christian traditions or American or European or Asian history into these very unique stories, myths. They're able the storytelling is just very intricate in regards to how mangakas write these things. And that doesn't, even with horror, we do get instances of that. Horror, as it is in American media, in American Hollywood realm, and even abroad, it is usually the weaker of the good narratives. Like there's not many instances in anywhere where it's like, okay, yeah, we got a decade of just excellent horror. You could probably say in the current times we are getting more of that. Horror is starting to get a little bit more nuanced, and that's wonderful. But traditionally, it's something where people kind of look at it as being corny or having a cornier element to it. And again, with Japanese mangas and the stories that the mangakas come up with, typically that is something that also takes place in the horror in Japan and the stories that Japanese mangakas tell. It's just a reality, I think, that comes with horror. But there are times where we do get really good stories in horror. As I mentioned, you see this in things like Walking Dead. You see this in things like Quiet Place. You see this in things like the Alien franchise. Even if not every time, you're still able to see that in this, and that's what you're able to see that. Excuse me, you're able to see that in horror, the idea of really good storytelling, and that also plays a part here again with those three series that I mentioned being kind of what seems to be the inspiration behind Mad does a really good job of making sure that the storytelling that those series kind of bring is also shown here. And again, characters are the biggest thing here. The characters are the relationships between the characters are the things that hold you in with that thrill, keeps you on your toes as much as you can feel it keeps the character in the actual series on their toes. So if you are somebody who is not necessarily only a consumer of the shonen action ki blast ninjutsu fighting, if you're somebody that's more akin to something like Tokyo Ghoul, where characters, I would say that's another example where character relationships really play a big part in the entire series. If you're somebody who does kind of branch out, or a series like Monster, if anybody has ever kind of delved into that's watching this video, then if you're somebody who has that palette where it's flexible, it's diverse, and that's something that interests you, and you also have a keen interest in horror, then this is something where I would maybe say, okay, you should give it a shot. It's very early and it's new, so it's something where you'll be able to follow along with it. Even at this point, you'll be able to catch up and follow along with it relatively easy because it's just that new. So if that is something that you do enjoy, those more story driven character, Last of Us, Quiet Place, Walking Dead, if you're more into those types of things, or if you have an interest at all in those types of storytelling directions, then this is something where I would definitely say you should just give it a shot and see how it goes, because it has held my interest for this at this point, and I do plan on continue reading it, but yeah, just this might be your bag. The next thing that I have here as a highlight is the atmosphere. So with great characters that can create thrill, the next thing that's kind of up for you is going to be the atmosphere. I feel like that's the thing that kind of complements that story narrative. If it is good, that's what gives it that extra little that really kind of draws you in. And Mad is a series that follows this template as well. And I'm gonna kind of go into exactly what I mean, because there is an element of this that does disappoint me, but we'll get there. But in regards to how it is set up, everything is pretty much desolate. You have all of these beings that kind of play a part in regards to this apocalyptic situation that they're in. You have all of them in this more desolate area, which creates a fear for you anytime that the monsters, or anytime that the characters have to do anything in the series. It immediately draws that thrill because everything is just so open, and it makes you feel kind of the fear that they would have having to deal with a environment that's just so open. So I do love that. And outside of that, when we do get to a place that is a little bit more sheltered, at that point, that's where you're going to be running into also this eerie and kind of haunted horror-ish feel. That's what the places at least have been so far in the series. I don't know whether this is going to be something that stays. I don't know if that the sense of dread that kind of comes with the atmosphere in the series is something that's going to be a mainstay of the series down the line. But in this current moment, from what I've seen from Mad so far, it is something that I personally would expressed as being a highlight of the series at this point. Some of my main concerns, the first is going to be the main enemy. So I'm not going to sugarcoat this. If you look up this series, if you're somebody who goes and dives further into the series, just to kind of see, okay, what was Croco talking about here? Is this something that I would enjoy? You're going to see the main villain. So I'm not going to and this is where I said earlier, it maybe would constitute as a spoiler alert. I'm not sure, but I will say it in advance. This will be the only spoiler alert is in reference to the villain and just basic information in regards to the characters. But the main villain is essentially the alien from the Alien franchise. That is, you see this relatively early on. That's why I say it's not something that I'm really spoiling, because you get the monster first chapter. It's not anything that's going to ruin the experience of Mad for you, but that is something that does concern me on the simple fact that we've seen the alien before. We've seen different versions of the alien before, if you would count The Quiet Place as being an example of this. I mean, it's not to say that it's something that's been used overly. It's been expressed way too much, oversaturation, excuse me, that's the word I was looking for. Thank you, anybody out there that just said what happened with Croco right there. I do apologize, I had a brain fart. But it's not the alien, the idea of the alien is not something that is oversaturated per se. We do get aliens, and maybe you could say aliens as a whole, like the idea of different species of aliens invading Earth in some capacity is something that has been used a lot. Yes, I would give you that. But what I mean is the specific design and structure of Alien from the Alien franchise is not something that has been overused. The only other example, at least that comes to mind for me, of something that fits that bill would be A Quiet Place. So I'm not mad. I'm not mad at the fact that they actually have the alien. It's just a question of, okay, I've given 2 examples in this video of where we have seen this alien-like structure and being play a part. What are they going to do to make this alien, different or appear different than the aliens that we've seen in A Quiet Place, the aliens that we've seen in the Alien franchise? It worries me, because if it's the same thing that we've seen, I feel like it can end up drying the series out a little early on. So, yeah, and people would just get sick of seeing it. There is another element to the alien that I do think is, at least to the aliens' structural capacity. I'm trying my best not to spoil things here, guys. Sorry. But there is another element to the alien, putting it very simple, that I do think will be able to be fleshed on further. But again, the main enemy, the alien itself, that's where I do have a little bit of fear and concerns. What I will say is the power structure does tie to the alien, and I also put that here as a highlight for me as well. I do like the power structure currently as it is in regards to how everything works, not only within the aliens, but also within the aliens' influence on the actual planet itself. So that part is interesting. I do think that can help, but what happens to the initial main villain? What happens to that enemy if they're just simply the same thing that we've seen not over and over again, but that we've seen multiple times before? The other thing, and this is probably going to be a shock to some people out there that's listening, but the other thing that I do think is a little disappointing or concerning at the very least is the environment. Now, I know you're going to say, Croco, you just got done saying that they have a great atmosphere. And I do still believe that. And I do believe that there is a difference between the two. The atmosphere itself is something that's created, whether they are out in a desolate place or whether they are in an shelter area. That is created no matter what. That is the part that I do enjoy. The actual environments themselves is the part that is lackluster at this current point. Now, again, there is an element of exploration to the series, and as well as that, it just started. It's fresh. I don't think that there's 50 chapters out of this series at this point. It's very fresh. So the environment could potentially change in ways that I do think is more capturing for the eye and just more impressive and something that you can kind of sink into more. The biggest thing is will they be able, if they do go that route, to to continue bringing over the atmosphere that they have built up so far. I don't know, again, because it's so early on, but there's been maybe 3 scenes that we've seen, and essentially, like, it's just 3 scenes of, you either get the desolate place, you either get the shelter place, and then you kind of you get like one more place that's like, all right, yeah, but it looks very similar to what we've already seen. There's no environmental inspirations outside of like rocks. Like, that is just like rocks and metal doors. That is the inspiration that they have for the environment right now to me. And that's just my personal opinion. Someone else may end up reading the series and say, well, no, I think that the environment is perfect. And I will honestly hear your arguments on that. If anybody is watching this on YouTube, leave a comment letting me know if you do disagree with me. And that's perfectly fine. It's just, for me, it's something where it concerns me, because it's like, okay, well, if we're going to just have this desolate area, or we're going to have shelters, and we just keep bouncing back and forth between the two, is that something very much like the main enemy that we're going to get sick of or bored with very quickly? So there's that, but that worries me. And also, as well as that, those 2 points, those 2 concerns lead to the third concern that I have, which is the actual staying power of the series. Is it something where, if they continue to do the same thing over and over again, whether it's environment, or whether it's the enemy, or whether it's even the interactions that happen between the characters, is that something that's going to make people get sick of the series, and make that series kind of get pushed down further? It is right now, as far as I know, from Shonen and Manga Plus, it's breaking like top 30, but you could very quickly see that kind of fall down into like maybe top 100, and maybe even below that, if it doesn't have those changes that I'm anticipating they will, and optimistic that this series will have. So we'll have to see. There is still way more to be interested about with this series. So I don't mean to say these concerns to turn really anybody off. I just want to let you guys know how I feel after reading up until the current chapter of this manga, what things I'm starting to notice. And you may notice those same things, or these things may be something that they would kind of turn you off. I at least just want to point those things out as they exist. The next thing that I'm going to kind of get into, and this will be the last thing that I have. I don't want this video to be too long for you guys, but the last thing that I have here is going to be actually me kind of diving into the characters, since they are so important, and the relationships that they have are so important, and just to familiarize you with them, to see if there's, any visual element to these characters that might entice you to want to read the series for yourself. So the first one that we have here, I just got a little layout of this. I'm not going to talk about every single one of these characters, and I'm going to run through this relatively fast, but I did just want to kind of give you the characters that I view at this current point as being important. The black side, or the right hand side of the screen, is going to be the characters that we're really engaging with at this current moment. The white side, or the left hand side of the screen, is going to be characters that we haven't really seen in a while. So they're not really the main focus of the story as it exists now, but they are very important characters that we've been introduced to in the series. So I do want to take some time to talk about them very briefly. The first one up that we have here is John. John is the main character. John, what I love about John is, first of all, the way that his personality is set up. It's a mystery is one of the things that kind of is the backbone of the series, outside of the character relationships and obviously the monster to some extent. A good extent. I don't even know if I can say some extent, but a good extent. But outside of, again, those 2 things, the biggest thing that kind of is holding this series up is the mystery. There's a lot of things that we just don't know at this current point in regards to how everything came about for this series. And I'm okay with that. I love when horror kind of has an element of mystery in it in general. So and also it makes me interested in figuring out exactly what that is. It's keeping me in line with it. With Attack on Titan, it makes me think a little bit of that. I know that's probably not the name that people want to hear if they want to go with a story narrative, but Attack on Titan, if we think about the very beginning of Attack on Titan, there was so much that we just didn't know, and we would get little tidbits as to what those things are that we need to know. And then there's also kind of like that flashbacky uh phase that happens in Attack on Titan, and that is something that I see happening here as well. So I personally like that. I do love that. It makes me want to read further on, and that's a big thing here. With John, there's almost like John is again the main character, so the mystery with him plays a big part in the overall mystery that's just kind of given to us throughout the series. What I love is, and I find interesting, is his personality is very confusing and mysterious at this point. What I mean by that is he has a lot of highs and lows. So there's instances where he could present himself in a less interesting or less attractive way, and then there's ways where you look at him and you go, "That's my main character. Like that's the guy I want to root for. You almost proud of him." It's kind of like, there you go, John. He has a lot of moments like that. And I think that that's cool. As much as I can be annoyed at one angle of that, getting excited from the other side of his personality, the sides that are more attractive, I do like when we get that. But if we don't get that all the time and we happen to get the lower sides of his personality, it's just kind of like, all right, well, this is going to likely build to something bigger in this character. So that, to me, again, it's what you put in it that makes me stick around, or just have the curiosity that I may need to stick around. And so in that being able to be expressed in John's personality, I think that's a huge plus, and it is something that interests me, as well as that there is a power system in here. Again, I'm not going to share too much because I don't want to spoil, but there is some sort of power structure here. So with John, his powers, I'm very interested. We haven't seen that much from it in the series yet, but I'm very interested to see exactly how his powers can morph around the type of person that he is. And is that something that even plays a part in the power subset that John has? I'm very curious right now at this point to see how that all unfolds as the series progresses. So I will also say that is a more interesting point with this character, John. Some of the weaker points that I would say for John are going to be his emotions. You could say this is the low side in my eyes of that personality that I was speaking on before, but I don't think that it's just the lows. Like, there's elements of his emotions that I do enjoy, but I just don't think that those elements of his personality are gonna lead him into good scenarios or setups, or at least it's showing that there may be a level of instability in this character. So I'm a little cautious about that, but it could go really bad, or it could be something that is really good at continuing the character's development. I just don't know, but I would consider right now it feels like that's a weaker point, maybe even a point of concern. The other thing is his judgment. Now, the main character's judgment is something that can play a very significant role in a series. So that's why I kind of have it here as a weaker point, because the judgment calls that John has made have been questionable at best. There at points where somebody is actually in his corner and trying to help him, he can be guarded, and it's like, why? Everything here kind of shows that this may be something that can help you, and he'll run away from it. Now, granted, this could be just a great breakdown of a character's personality and such. I do understand that. But then when you have instances where he's naive around other people, it does kind of start to upset and frustrate you with the character of John. And if it's something where, again, there's a continuous nature with that naivety. I don't know how to pronounce that word right now, but you guys know what I mean. Just that naive nature. If that's something that does end up having a repetitive theme behind it, it makes me worry how much the actual anger and frustration that a reader will have with this character might end up causing people to turn away from the series as well. Next up after John, I'm taking a little time, is Emma. I'm not going to talk much about Emma, but I do want to, because it just feels like if I try to go too hard in talking about Emma, I'm going to spoil things. So I'm not going to talk too much about Emma, but I'm just going to really quickly go into these points. Emma's relationship with John. That is, I'll say this much. Maybe you could call this a spoiler, but it's not really spoiling much. Again, you get this very early on in the actual series itself. But Emma is John's sister. I'm not going to say anything else beyond that. I love the relationship that Emma has with John. I love their dynamic where John has this kind of like Jekyll and Hyde-ish between highs and lows. Emma is just all highs. You know, she's a great example of just optimistic, and it's great. It's like somebody who I want to be a friend. That's the kind of character that Emma has throughout the series. And leading to that second point, character personality. It's just somebody you want to be friends with, or at the very least, somebody you would want to be a fly on the wall in a room with for anything motivating, anything inspirational. I love the way that this character is written to where they can take simple concepts or take something that maybe you don't even have the strongest backbone in regards to, and turn that into something that is like a really great learning lesson just for anybody, whether it's a character in the story or it's the actual reader of the manga. I love when we get characters like that. And that's what Emma is. Emma is that type of, her character and her personality fits that mold. Her weaker point, I really can't say too much in regards to this part without spoiling anything for you, but her weaker point is just simply her current position in the series. It limits the role that this great, inspirational, motivating character can have, but if you actually pick up the series, you'll be able to understand more what I mean by that. And Emma is not the only character that I feel that way about, that is a weaker point for. Moving along, we have Ethan. We'll just start with weaker points really quickly because I don't want to speak too much on that. But Ethan reminds me a lot of Emma. It's pretty much the same thing. Yeah, that's why even the points here that I have are the same exact things that you saw on the previous slide with Emma. Ethan's character it's not the inspiration and motivation and like life lessons that you get with Emma, but it is somebody who you want to root for in the series. That's just the type of character. Very leadership, very empathetic, very kind. It's just those types of character traits are attributed to Ethan. Again, I said I would start with the weaker points, and I just kind of skipped over that, went right to character and personality. But anyways, the weaker points is his position in the series as well. Great character, has great traits, has traits that are great for our main character, but the current position of this character in the series does make things difficult. And I kind of hate that that's both the case for both Ethan and Emma at this current point in the story. Again, his relationship with John, I feel like we only got a little bit of this, but I do think that the impact that relationship has fostered at this point is something that will have a huge impact on John down the line. You already kind of see that impact play a part in between with the relationship that he has with Emma, but I do think that down the line we'll start to see what that relationship that we've seen so far with Ethan and John has on the impact that has on John down the line. And it's really interesting because right now, again, with this character, Ethan in particular, it's very much mysterious. It's not known, but you kind of get the idea that the relationship will play a larger part in John's development down the line. So yeah, that's all I'm going to say about Ethan. Again, some of these characters I just can't speak too much on without spoiling anything, and I'm just trying to do my best to be very careful about that. Okay, next up is going to be Leon. Leon is different. Leon is cool, but Leon is a not so nice character, and that's all I'll say. I won't say whether he is an ally or an enemy. Even the lines in that is kind of blurred, but he is a not so nice person. Even though he's a not so nice person, one thing that I do like is I feel like his ambition kind of drives the story further, and not only the story, but Leon's ambitions kind of drive the thrill even further for the series. So that's something that I'm very interested to just see as it progresses and what exactly we get from that. And then the other thing about Leon that's interesting is Leon is another character where we see different powers that are display, and exactly what right now is kind of a mystery is what are the extent of his powers. And also the same thing that kind of plays a part with John is what exactly does the ambition or the personality, the character of Leon, how does that exactly play a part in his powers? So I think that that's very interesting to learn more of as well as this series progresses. Weaker points: personality and morals. It's just not great, and it's very awkward. It's very, very awkward. I don't really care to see much of it, but at the same time, I don't know exactly what this character's role is going to be in the larger setup of the series. But it's just something where it turns me off because it's very gross and awkward and not my type of bag. But I do think that the character's morals and personality kind of do play a good part in telling a good story. It's just not, if you're a good person, sometimes you just don't want to see people that are as gross and awkward and inappropriate as Leon is at times. But moving right along, we are going to go over to Oscar. Oscar is okay. If Leon is bad, Oscar is worse. All right. So the only thing that I will say is Oscar, we don't know much about his powers, and that's kind of interesting. He also is somebody though that should kind of be able to showcase various things, and we also don't know how those powers actually play into that whole personality character point and what exactly that means. So I do love that his powers kind of leave us open to mystery. You could say the same thing about his personality and character. It does leave a level of mystery, but he is the grossest and like most morally corrupt character in the series. Maybe. I mean, that's debatable, but it's what I think is going to end up being the case. It's just no. And also, he's like the antithesis to my favorite character, which we haven't gotten to yet, but we should be coming upon soon. Again, don't want to spoil anything else. Don't want to spoil anything for you guys, so I'm just going to leave it at that. But I think most people, if you do pick up the series, will probably feel the same way that I feel about Oscar. He does not have any strong points. He does not have many interesting points, and he's just a character that, I don't really like that much. Moving along, we have Bob. Bob is my favorite character. I love Bob. All right, I feel like Bob is extremely human, and I am very excited to kind of see how things develop and grow with Bob. I don't know. It's the mystery with Bob is just how are things going to play out for Bob. Yes, you could say that about any one of the characters, but like with Bob, because Bob has such a great personality, he has all of those qualities that Emma and Ethan have, but it's like kind of wrapped up in one person. We do also, from what it seems like, we'll be getting a lot of Bob, as Bob is currently with our main character at this point. But when you take that, the other thing about Bob that's great outside of his personality is his relationships. He's great at forming relationships in this apocalyptic world. Like, honestly, he's probably the best person at forming relationships to me. So the thing about his personality is it's able to connect people throughout the series, and I personally love that and am interested in seeing how that evolves further. But the relationships that he forms also does the same thing. It's not, it may be if his personality pushes the actual like story itself, his ability to form relationships pushes the characters' individual stories further. And I really just love that about him as a character. Outside of that, his ambition is something where it creates that mysterious element for him. We do understand his ambitions, but there is also a huge part to his ambitions that we just do not understand. And there is a sense of interest and curiosity that kind of forms in Bob in that moment. The one thing that I will say is his weak point is his insecurities. He has had some disappointing moments, but overall, I do feel like they're going to give us way more way more moments where we want to support Bob as opposed to we are disappointed by him and his insecurities. And also because character development is a thing, it is very possible that Bob can move past these insecurities. And that's something else that is a mystery to us right now, but is something that I am interested to see how it will develop. All right, next up we have Lily. Lily's cool. Lily's not super interesting to me personally. What I do like that, or I do think is a positive point for her, or an interesting point, or could be considered an interesting point for Lily, is Lily's optimism. Lily is the optimism in the series at this current point. They are in an apocalyptic world. There is not a lot of moments to be optimistic, but you do you don't want things to be too bleak and too depressing. And that's where Lily kind of comes into play. Her optimism and her personality, which is just kind of like bubbly and cheerful. Even when you look at her here on the screen, you could tell like she's got the blush, and everything about her is just kind of like, okay, this is going to be the positive point in the series. That's the vibe that she's giving off right now, where things kind of feel too dark and sad. We can brighten it up with Lily and characters like Lily. And I think that that's cool. I'm curious to see how exactly that advances as well as that. I don't want to spoil anything here, but Lily is very akin to Bob. This may have a deeper implication in the series, but she is akin to Bob in the sense of the relationship aspect. She's great at making relationships throughout the series. She has different relationships with various characters throughout the series. And it's interesting to see if she's going to progress the story further with her ability in forming these relationships. And if so, what exactly will that look like? And is that, just what is that going to be? I'm very interested in that. The next thing is going to be her weaker points. Her weaker point is just one thing. It's very similar to Bob, where it's just really one thing that I would consider a weaker point. And for Lily, it's her cowardice. It is annoying to me in the series right now. But what I am hoping for is that it isn't something that is always annoying in the series. I hope that it is something that we can end up having her grow beyond. We can get character development where she actually stretches beyond just that cowardice nature that we've seen from her. But there have been some disappointing moments with her character in regards to that. And then we have Norman. Norman is another character I don't want to say too much about. But what I will say is the most interesting point about Norman is for like 95, if not 98% of the characters that we've been introduced to so far, Norman has an influence on. I'm not going to say what those influences are because that would be something that would spoil it. But Norman has a major influence on all of these characters. And the mystery that kind of exists with Norman at this point is how is that influence going to root in these characters? What is that going to look like going further? And then the other point that I will say is his current location, status, all of the words that could possibly be attributed to that. They make it difficult for him to have any more interest in the series. So I don't like that part. That's about as much as I can say, though, without spoiling the series for you guys. And so that is Mad, guys. A little bit longer of a review than I wanted. But I did just kind of want to give you a breakdown of how I felt about the characters, what the series is essentially about, apocalyptic, alien-esque world. I wanted you guys to kind of get an understanding of that, see some of the things that I like about the series, and see if it's a series that you maybe can get into yourself. Thank you again. If you have stuck around all the way to the end of this video, please make sure to like and subscribe both for Croco's Corner and also Squad Nero Podcast. As we continue to have more content made for you, we're going to be trying to diversify with more videos like this one that we recorded here today. So please be on the lookout for anything new. Also, we do have a podcast where we have a live stream of us all coming together and just talking about various things that happen throughout the week and throughout the month as it relates to anime, manga, comics, and pop culture and the sorts. So if you are free on a Saturday evening, or Monday evening. Be on the lookout. You can also follow us on Instagram, where I will provide an update, or one of us will provide an update to let you know when exactly that live show is going to be. But be on the lookout for those shows as we discuss everything under the sun as they relate to, again, anime, manga, pop culture, and the sort. Thank you guys again. Remember to like and subscribe, and I hope you guys have a wonderful, awesome anime and comic filled day and week. Take care.